Hi, I'm Ray with Arizona Controls, and this is our Viper 3D printer. This video is the first in a series to show you how to print a two-color TIE fighter model like this one. This is the first model I printed. It turned out to be a bit small, so we'll be scaling it up to 25% to make it easier to print, like this one. In order to print this model, you'll need to edit the G-code files that you generate with your slicing software. This model is comprised of 10 parts. The first part we're going to print is the outside of the wing, which you'll need to print twice. First, let's take a look at an exploded view of our TIE fighter model.
Okay, so here's the exploded view of the model. As you can see, you have two outer wing pieces, two inner pieces, two center pieces, and then the four parts of the cockpit. And you can print these in any two colors that you want. These are two color parts, this is a two color part, this is a two color part, the rest of them are just a solid color. So feel free to experiment. And this is what the model looks like when it's assembled. So let's take a look at the first part we're going to print, and that's going to be the outside of the wing. Okay, so here we are in Simplify 3D, and first thing I'm going to do is import the STL files. Now, if you want these STL files, you can get them from my website, which is www.arizonacontrols.com, in the documentation section. And you're probably going to want to do that because if you're not using Simplify 3D, you know, you're going to use your own slicing software that's set up for your printer. And I wouldn't recommend using my G-code, which you can also download unless you have a Viper 3D printer, because you're gonna have different extrusion multipliers, and there's going to be a lot of different variables that aren't going to work for your printer if you run my G-code. So first, let's import the outside frame, and we're going to scale it to 1250, which is 25% bigger than 100%, and Simplify 3D 1000 equals 100% in real life. And I'm doing that because the first TIE fighter that I printed, I did it at 100% of the scale, and some of the parts are really tiny, and especially the windows on the front were very hard to print because they're so small, and that's the reason I scaled it up 25%. Now we're going to import Panel Assembly version 2, and we're going to scale it as well to 1250. And there you go. It's all aligned. You don't have to center and arrange. If you center and arrange, it's going to do that, and you don't want that. And if you do misclick, you can always use Control-Z to put it back. Okay. So now we're going to assign the specific parts to each process. The first process that I have set up is Extruder 1, which is going to be the white filament, and I want it to print the outside tie frame. And the second extruder, or process 2, is black filament, and I'm going to select none and select this panel assembly. And the way you can tell if it's done it properly is you click on process 1, and you can see the gold colored frame is highlighted, and if I click on process 2, now my panels are highlighted, and that's it. Now we're going to prepare to print, and we're going to select both processes, and there we go. Costs 24 cents, takes 38 minutes, and we're going to we'll preview that this is going to print properly. I'm in line mode, and I'm just going to use this slider, and that's how it's going to print. Okay, so let's generate our G code. I already tested this G-code, but I'm going to show you how to edit it. So that's the reason I saved it on top of the copy that I already did. Okay, let's get to the G-code. Okay, so here we are in Windows Explorer, and I'm going to navigate to the folder I saved my G-code in, which is I called it TIE Fighter G-code Big. And here's our G-code. Open with Notepad. Here's our G-code. And if you haven't watched the video, or if you don't understand G-code, I recommend that you watch the video that I made for how to understand what G-code is and how it works. Here's the beginning of the G-code. The M140S50 is the heated bed. We want the heated bed, but we don't want to wait for it to heat up. So we're going to get rid of M190S50. So I can just heat up while the extruder's heating up. M104 S190T1 is the extruder 2, which is tool 1. And we're just going to get rid of this. And I'm going to change this M109 command to a 104 command. So now what's going to happen is when you execute this G-code, the heated bed immediately is going to start to heat up, as is extruder 0 or extruder 1 tool 0. And the machine is going to heat both of them up at the same time, and then it's going to wait for tool 0 to reach 190 degrees. Once it does, it's going to start its print. It's going to home the machine and then do an auto leveling sequence. And when it does that, it's going to turn on tool 1. And the reason I do it that way is I don't need tool 1, for the first layer, or for the outer frame. So I'm going to let this heat up while tool 0 is printing. This is a filament retraction, and we're going to get rid of that because we don't need it. And down here we're going to turn this is a filament movement, and we're going to make it 10. And we're going to change the feed rate from 300 millimeters per minute to 900. And the reason we're doing that is because the Viper 3D printer that I designed can handle a retraction of 10 millimeters in between prints. So what we're going to do is our extruder is in a retracted state, so we're going to move it forward 10 so that the filament is at the end of the nozzle. And the reason I'm doing this way is so I don't have to use an ooze shield, which I don't like. So this we'll move the filament forward, and then we start printing the skirt. And then there's one other thing that we want to do, and I want to change this temperature for extruder 2 to 150. Because what we're going to be doing is we're going to alternate cooling off the offline extruder so it doesn't ooze. And I'll show you how we're going to accomplish that. So when this is offline, I only want it to run at 150. When it's online, it'll run at 190, and this one will be at 150. So what we're going to do is go Edit, Find, and we're going to look for the first color change, which is Tool 1. And what we're going to do is here it's finished printing the frame, and that's for tool 0 or extruder 1, and we want to retract it 10. And we are missing a line of code right here. So I'm going to copy this. I'm going to put it right after this height command, and we're going to change it to 0. Now, the other thing that we're going to do is we're going to change all of these G1, E0, F3000 commands. So we're going to copy, and we're going to go Edit, Replace. We're going to change all these to 900. And the reason I did that is because if you pull back the extruder too fast, it can pull liquefied filament up into the nozzle and jam it, potentially. Doesn't happen all the time, but it's better if you retract it slowly, and it's better if you feed it slowly so that you don't get blobs. So let's go back to layer 2. Have to put a space in there, it won't find it. And we're back here, and as you can see, it's changed to 900 as well all the others, and we're going to change this one to 900. Okay, so now I'm going to open this extruder switching text file, and what this is this gets the extruder out of the way, gets it off the model, and these are the switching G codes. When tool 0 is active, tool 1 cools down to 150. When tool 1 is active, tool 0 cools down to 150. The M106 commands are the filament cooling fan, which I use to cool off my heat blocks faster. So I actually have the tubes aimed right at the back of my heater blocks. And it's not enough to overcome the heater, but it is enough to cool off the heater block to 150 before we start to print the next layer. And it works very well. I've already tested it. So here it turns up the fan, which is an analog signal, to 255, which is 100%. And here the M106 shuts it off after we reach temperature. We're just going to copy this whole block. And then what we're going to do is where this T1 is, which is assigning tool 1, we're going to highlight it and then paste our code in there. And since we're doing tool 1, we're going to get rid of this block of code. Now we're set up for tool 1. So now we're going to go to the next color change, and we're just going to do this until we run out of color changes. And the easiest way to do it is we're going to look for the tool. So we're going to go to the next color change is going to be tool 0. Since we're on tool 1, it's at layer 4. We're going to go -10 to retract, and then we're going to highlight this, and we're going to repaste our code, and we're on tool 0, so we're going to get rid of the T1 stuff. Keep that fan command, and that's all there is to it. As you can see, we already have our filament move. So now we're going to go to T1, and we're -10, and paste, and get rid of this code, and keep doing that until you run out of tool 1s, because that's going to end before tool 0. So you're just going to go to the next one, and so on and so forth. Okay, so here we are. I'm at layer 11, and I'm going to go to the next color change for tool 1. and it cannot find tool 1 because there are no more tool 1 color changes. So this is the last place that we're going to use tool 1. So what we're going to do is we're going to lower the set point to 0, and that's going to shut off the heater for tool 1 as it's no longer used. And now we're just going to go to the end of our G code, and we're missing a retraction command that we need here because we want to leave our extruder in a retracted state. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to copy this with the G92E0, which is the origin command for the extruder. It resets it to 0. Copy it. I'm going to paste it right here. And I'm going to change this to -10. And that's it. That's the end of the G code. Now our tool 1 is shut off. This is going to shut off tool 0, and we are ready to print. I'm going to save the file, and let's print this part. We want to do one thing before we start printing, and so this is the G code file that I just got done editing. And what we're going to do is just double click it, and it's going to open up in the preview mode in Simplify 3D. And the reason we want to do this is just to make sure we didn't make any errors, and there won't be any problems, and we see that everything is good to go. Okay, so now we're going to print. I like to print from an SD card. I find that's the surest way to make sure that your print will finish and run properly. And here we go. First it's going to print 2 lines of the skirt. And we use the skirt to make sure we got a well-primed extruder. Obviously, if you're editing the G code for your printer, you're going to set it up in a different way. Well, you're welcome to try it. I don't think it would work well because of the different variables that your slicer and your printer are going to have loaded. As you can see on that right extruder, I had a leak. Had to tighten up the nozzle. But it's not going to hurt anything. And as soon as it gets done with this inner line, we're going to go to first color change. And here we go. Now we're heating up the opposite extruder and cooling off the extruder 1 or tool 0, and it takes about 41 seconds, so I'm going to jump forward. And here we go. And notice we don't have any oozing on our from our tool 0 or extruder 1. And if you notice it's running fairly slowly. It's because in Simplify 3D I have it set up to run at 50% speed for the first layer, and that's so we get a nice first layer, which really sets the tone for the whole print. So we'll jump forward so you don't have to sit through this. And now it's printing layer 3. And we'll jump forward again. notice it's running faster now because it's running at 100%. And our next color change. And now we're printing white. Layer 4. This will be layer 4 and 5. It's going to do 2 layers at a time. And we'll jump forward and color change complete. We're going to print another 2 layers. Jumping forward. When it finishes this last panel, then it's going to start printing the ribs. Goes ribs, and we'll jump forward again. And one more time. And as this finishes up, we're only going to have one color change left. It's going to print these ribs one more time after the white completes. You notice I'm getting a little bit of line across the white. But that's okay because it's going to cover all that up. And a color change. Now we're going to do 2 layers of white and then the final layer of black. I don't know if you noticed that I'm actually printing these on fast mode. I've also printed them on medium, but there's not that much difference. You can't really tell any difference, and it's a big time saver to print them on fast. It only raises the layer height by 0.1 millimeters, which is pretty minute. Jumping forward. And we're almost to our last color change. And we're just going to print the ribs, and then the extruder 2 will cool off to 0 as we Showed you when we edited the G code, and the rest will be white. And this is the last of our color changes. And it's white from here on out. And we're off. Notice I got a little bit of a string there. Sometimes you will have to intercede while the printer is printing. I keep a set of hemostats on hand for that purpose. So I don't want that thing interfering. Bye-bye. Going to jump forward. You can see it's layering up my angles here. And this is the final part of the print. As you can see, by switching the extruders the way we did, there's very little cleanup needed for the part. And we should be getting close to the final layer. I believe this is it. Now extruder 0 shut off, and onward and upward. And I've had people ask me why I don't use borosilicate glass. The reason is that I prefer a flexible build surface because all you have to do is bend it and the model will just pop right off. Makes it a lot easier, no scrapers, you don't have to worry about damaging the part. And there we go. First TIE Fighter part ready for assembly. Very little cleanup required.
So there you have it, the first part of our TIE Fighter model. The next part we're going to be printing will be the inside of the wing. If you like this video and want to see more like it, please subscribe below and toss us a like. We always welcome your comments. Please feel free to visit us at www.arizonacontrols.com, where the STL files and the G-code files are available for download. Have a great day, and thank you for watching.